often stepmoms will be misunderstood and they'll be treated unfairly.
Sure.
This is an unfortunate reality that you might be facing right now. But how you choose to respond to the unfairness will directly correlate with the degree of peace you get to experience throughout the journey.
Welcome to the Blended Family Coaching Show, where you'll discover how to move your stepfamily from just surviving to truly thriving.
Grab your headphones and listen in as we share practical, real-life strategies for building healthy bonds,
Understanding the kids' perspective,
romance and partnership,
parenting with great teamwork.
and yes, even co-parenting with a difficult ex.
We're Mike and Kim Anderson, and we believe with the right tools, every step couple can overcome the common challenges of stepfamily life.
Join us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations to discover how you can lead your family with confidence and create the future you really want.
Well, hey there. Thanks so much for joining us here on the show today. We are very, very thankful for you. And, you know, honestly, the response to the show has been really exciting, affirming, and kind of humbling.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
That we even do this. In fact, we're seeing the listenership continue to climb, but we're also hearing from lots of people how difficult it is to find helpful blended family resources.
Yeah.
And we would be so grateful if you might consider just sharing the show out on your social media for those who might be struggling to find support. Maybe you could write a little bit about how the show's been helpful for you and encourage other blended family couples to check it out too. So thanks for considering that. And again, thanks for just being a faithful listener.
Yes.
We're really grateful for you.
We appreciate you so much. Now, if you're someone who's been listening to our podcast and you're searching for practical help, you've probably already realized just how stressful blended family life can be. You know that all of the relational complexities are challenging. Managing the tension in your home and creating healthy bonds in your family will take intentional effort. And, you know, if you've got forces that are outside your home that seem to be intruding on you and causing a lot of problems, that can make things even more challenging.
Yeah, that was a little cryptic, but you know, typically the force that's outside the home that's impacting you is the ex. You know, it's really common for an ex to struggle and be challenged emotionally when a recoupling has happened. Now there's this new person on the scene, and that ex probably doesn't know that new person all that well. And that impacts not only their life, but that new person is also caring for their kids and developing a relationship with them. That can be a precarious time of adjustment for an ex.
Yeah.
And it's helpful to understand this stage of transition and try to find it in yourself to give them a little bit of grace as they adjust. In fact, back in episode 44 called Why Does My Husband's Ex Think I'm the Enemy? You could really learn some things and gain some understanding and empathy for that ex, which can help you to remain confident and steady as you start to navigate forward. Now, there are some exes that seem to kind of have it together. They've got a mature mindset around the whole situation, and they're able to embrace the new reality pretty well. And these exes are pleasant and easy to interact with, but honestly, we don't really talk about them that much because they're not causing any trouble or eliciting pain in our home, right?
No. And, you know, cooperative exes really do exist, believe it or not. We had a pretty cooperative relationship with my ex the first 10 years until his attitude kind of shifted suddenly and things got really difficult and toxic.
Sure.
This is why I sometimes refer to exes as the wild card, because you don't always know what's going on with them emotionally, and things can drastically change without notice.
Sure.
You also don't have control over how they react to things that are going on in your home. But today we want to focus on ways to cope with a high conflict ex who tends to make things harder than they really need to be, unfortunately. And whether it was apparent at the beginning when you entered the picture or there was a defining incident that happened along the way. Dealing with a high conflict ex can be emotionally exhausting. They can sometimes behave aggressively and be challenging to interact with or maintain a reasonable co-parenting relationship with.
Sure.
They might say inappropriate things to the kids or create a loyalty bind for them that negatively impacts your home and your relationship with your stepkids.
Mm-hmm.
They might undermine your position as stepmom by telling the kids they don't need to respect you, or they might stir up a lot of petty drama between the two households. It might even feel like they're intentionally trying to sabotage your marriage and that your spouse is connected more to them sometimes than to you.
Sure.
Now, if you're dealing with a high conflict ex, it probably feels like they have too much power and they're invading your home.
Probably.
The situation might even feel hopeless to you, but you can learn to protect yourself from a high conflict ex and set some appropriate boundaries. And that's what we want to focus on today. We can help you with this.
Yeah, totally. And we just want to point out that we're primarily discussing this from the perspective of a stepmom who's struggling with the negative influence of your husband's ex-wife. Now, we hate to make this generalization, but this is simply the most common scenario that we hear about. Now, of course, an ex-husband can also be really high conflict.
Sure.
In fact, that was our experience in a really long season in our journey. But as we continue to support more and more couples, we found that it's generally an ex-wife, that bio mom, who might be reacting emotionally when a stepmom enters her kids' lives.
Right.
They can kind of turn into this mama bear and maybe start projecting some of their own insecurities or fears into the situation, which can put them in a protective mode or protective mindset. And that makes it difficult to reason with them sometimes and maintain a collaborative relationship. So we just want to make that clear. That's the perspective we're going to talk from. But many of the principles apply whether it's, a bio mom ex or a bio dad ex that you're really struggling with. Okay, so we want to jump in and talk about how you can minimize the conflict and power that an ex might have over your home and some ways to set healthy boundaries so that you can protect your marriage and maintain your own emotional security.
Yeah, that sounds good, right?
Yeah.
So first, we need to just call out that attempting to cut the ex out of your lives or keep the kids from spending time in their home, that's just not the answer.
What?
No, don't even go there. Unless there are some extreme circumstances, such as abuse,
Sure.
the kids need to spend time with their other parent, and your spouse does need to interact with their ex to discuss things that are pertinent to the welfare of the kids, right?
Sure,
that has
that's
to
right.
happen. And honestly, the best possible outcome for children is to have a loving relationship with both parents.
Right.
So you should not try to eradicate the ex, but you can do your part to foster peaceful cooperation. You also cannot expect to control or change the ex's behavior.
Oh, man.
I know. And the truth is, how they choose to parent the kids while in their home and what they choose to communicate to the kids is just not within your control. But that doesn't mean that you've lost control over what happens in your home.
Yeah.
And we've got several past episodes that focus on how to support the kids when they're being told lies about you or when you're being slandered.
Yeah.
Or when the kids are hurting emotionally because of what's happening in the other home. We've also got some episodes on what you can do when the rules are different at the other home and how to promote peace between the homes. And we're going to go ahead and put links in the show notes to several episodes that cover all of that. So you can go back and pick up some effective strategies to help you manage your home and support the kids well, even when you can't control what's happening in the other home.
That's right.
When coping with this high conflict or with a toxic ex, information is power.
Sure.
And so we encourage you to learn everything you can about how to navigate these challenging dynamics in a healthy way and in a positive way that promotes peace as much as you can.
Yeah, that's right. And, if we can't have control over the ex, and it's unrealistic to think that we can just cut them out of our lives, then we got to ask, well, what in the world can we do then?
Right.
Well, we can stick to focusing on ways to set healthy boundaries. Well thought out, respectful boundaries are something that we can control and can help us maintain a sense of composure, even if it feels like the ex is invading our home. And as we walk through this, keep in mind that there are some different extremes when it comes to exes. If you're navigating a season of what's called parental alienation with an ex, which is something we experienced, then some of what we're going to talk about today might look a little different. However, the principles still apply.
Sure.
In fact, if we had lived out some of these principles a little bit better in our own marriage when we were in the middle of some extreme circumstances with Kim's ex, we might have avoided some of the major conflict and the difficulties that we experienced with each other all those years ago.
I agree with that.
So if that's you, I want you to just keep listening and consider how some of these principles might uniquely apply to you. And let's start with some boundaries that will help protect yourself emotionally.
Right.
Because that's really where it starts. If you can't get stuff going around your heart and feel secure in your own heart, you're going to have a hard time interacting with the people around you. And one of the first things you can do is focus on setting limits around how much influence and power you're going to allow that ex to have in your life.
Yeah, you have control over that.
That's right. If you're struggling to cope with a high conflict ex, you're probably spending way too much time and energy focused on her.
Yeah.
If you and your husband talk about her excessively, if the majority of your problems seem to revolve around her, if she's constantly inserting herself into your life, or if her influence on the kids is hijacking your home, these are all signs that she might be taking up too much space in your lives and probably has a lot of power over your emotional well-being.
Yeah.
Now, a first step in taking back your power and reducing the emotional stress is to talk with your husband about how the two of you can start working together in setting some healthy limits in your home. The goal is to reduce the amount of time and energy you're spending on that ex. And here are just a few practical things you might want to consider.
Yeah.
First, you can actually set a time limit when you're discussing the issues that revolve around that ex. You know, when you do need to talk about what's going on with her, you can agree on a set amount of time and actually set a timer. We used to do this sometimes, remember, when we would be on a date night and we felt like your ex was invading our space.
Right.
We would set a timer that would allow us the space we needed to talk about it. But then once that timer went off, we would change the subject and we would move on with something else.
Right.
And
there's more to life.
absolutely. And, you know, we recommend that you start with no more than like 20 minutes or so. Give that a try, see if it gives you enough time, and then you can adjust it from there. But this approach can really help you to keep that ex from dominating your conversations or interfering in your relationship and really your daily life.
So important. Another thing you can do is set limits around where you'll discuss her. You might decide that your bedroom or the dinner table are off limits. Really choose to protect areas that should remain exclusively yours. And just a reminder here, never talk about the ex in front of the kids or even anywhere within earshot.
That's right. And kids have big ears.
That can cause big problems. Another thing you can do is establish some boundaries around how you'll respond to her communications. So if the ex tends to bombard you or your husband with a lot of unnecessary texts or emails or calls, you can decide how you'll handle those incoming messages. You know, if it's not urgent or if it's not an emergency, you can choose to respond respectfully and just let her know that you'll get back to her at a later time. This prevents her from hijacking whatever it is that you're currently doing.
I'm really glad you called out that, you know, if it's not urgent, sometimes we feel like it's this major urgent thing and we have to get back right away. But every time you respond immediately, you're actually training that ex to expect you to respond immediately.
Exactly.
So if you don't want that expectation on you, then wait a little bit. It's okay. Most of the time, it's not really that urgent.
Exactly. Now, if there is some verbal abuse or toxic comments being made, you may need to block her and insist on moving all communication to a specifically designed co-parenting platform. And there's quite a few out there. We're not all that familiar with them. There's one called Our Family Wizard that we've heard of, but you might want to do some research around that. And that way you can still share all that pertinent information about the kids, schedules, and stuff like that. But you can protect yourselves from hurtful interactions and unproductive conflicts with the ex.
Yeah, totally. You know, those are some simple and really practical limits and boundaries that you might want to implement as a couple so that these issues with the ex don't invade too much of your time and your energy or really just interrupt your daily life, right? And you might consider checking out episode 27. It's called How to Set Clear Boundaries and Safeguard Relationships to help you discover some more ways to set and enforce healthy boundaries in all kinds of relationships, including that difficult ex.
Absolutely.
But if you're a second wife who's been on the receiving end of the ex's volatility, setting these kinds of boundaries might not be enough, especially if you've been emotionally beat up and you're hurting. You might be feeling like an extreme stranded stranger, stuck on the outside due to these continual attacks from the ex and the tension that she's caused in your home. It's amazing how that ex can impact that stranded stranger trapped teammate dynamic.
It's really tough.
If that's you, we just want to say that we're so sorry that you've been experiencing that. And we hope that a few things that we have to share with you today can help you regain your confidence and also relieve some of that tension and that pain. So let's talk about what you can do, not just to survive these difficult circumstances, but really rise above them, maybe even thrive.
Yes. So one thing you can do is so important is to choose to redirect your focus. Now, this might be easier said than done. We know that. But if you spend time ruminating and thinking about your husband's ex or worrying about what she thinks, you're giving her too much power and you're actually inviting her to take up space in your life. You're allowing her to rob you of happiness and peace.
That's right.
You don't need that. You don't deserve that. Instead, make a conscious decision to turn away from thinking about her and turn toward the positive things in your life. And this really is about setting your own mental boundaries. You can think of it that way. Choose to think about what made you fall in love with your husband and the future that you're creating together, all the things you have to look forward to. And some of these things maybe aren't perfect, but you can still find positive, hopeful, sweet things that are happening every day, and you can think about those things. You can choose to meditate and think about those things.
Yeah, redirect your focus
there. So stay focused on what really matters to you and what's important, not on the latest drama that the ex-wife has decided to stir up this week, right? Don't take the bait. If the ex is having a bad day and she decides to take it out on you, you don't have to allow her bad day to become your bad day. I love that old saying. You can't stop a bird from landing on your head, but you can keep it from building its nest there.
That's right. Yeah. Those thoughts that land in your mind, you can shoo them away.
Yeah. You can choose to stay focused on the small, imperfect wins that you're experiencing in your family rather than focusing on the tensions around the ex.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, you know, many times we've said that everyone in a blended family dynamic will have a different perspective and experience their own reality. You know what? This also applies to the adults living in each of the homes.
Right.
Your husband's ex-wife has a perspective, and that's reality to her. Maybe her opinion is that you aren't a real mom, or that you don't add value to the kids' lives. Or maybe she assumes that when you and your husband get a babysitter and go out for a date night, that you're neglecting the kids and somehow doing something wrong. Maybe she feels she has the right to get angry and accuse you of overstepping just because you posted pictures on social media of your stepkids. She probably has all kinds of opinions about what kind of person you are, and might feel the need to question your motives, or she may try to elevate herself and her position as mom by belittling you. But as step-family coach and seasoned stepmom Jenna Korp says, her opinions, that ex's opinions, her words and her actions don't create your reality. They don't decide your worth or your value in this world or your value to other people. Her truth isn't your truth. She doesn't get to decide anything about you.
Yeah, that's so powerful.
Yeah, she's not mincing words there.
No.
I love that.
And you can tell she's been there.
Yeah, totally.
And, we say this is easier said than done because we've seen how very difficult it can be to tune out an ex. And I've been there. It is hard, especially if you've been allowing that ex to get under your skin.
Yeah.
And if you've been holding on to hurtful interactions and ruminating about all the pain she's caused, the natural reaction might be defensiveness and to become really reactive.
Yeah.
We've met second wives that have become fixated with everything their husband's ex is saying and doing.
Yep.
They'll regularly stalk the ex on social media or become preoccupied with all the interactions between the ex and the kids, as well as those with her husband. And unfortunately, very real problems can set in when this becomes a pattern, because the second wife can be deeply impacted by every little comment or even simple behaviors of the ex.
Yeah.
They continue to feel like they're under attack, and they can become easily offended by anything that the ex does.
Yeah. Now who has the power there?
Yeah, they allow the hurtful interactions to expand. It's kind of like that big mushroom cloud that happens after a nuclear bomb, right? It just expands, and the pain intensifies and gets bigger and bigger. And it's just, it's not healthy.
Yeah.
Now, one of the reasons this happens is because the second wife wants justice and fairness.
It's from a good place in her heart.
It's very normal. They seem to always be on the chopping block, as one stepmom described to me recently, and they get tired of it. I don't blame them. And the tough reality is, rarely are things ever fair in blended family dynamics.
Yep.
Many stepmoms get thrown under the bus. They'll be falsely accused. Things they do, even good things, might get twisted and misinterpreted. Often stepmoms will be misunderstood and they'll be treated unfairly.
Sure.
This is an unfortunate reality that you might be facing right now. But how you choose to respond to the unfairness will directly correlate with the degree of peace you get to experience throughout the journey.
That's right.
You can choose to get defensive and react to every little thing. You can desperately try to balance the scales and demand fairness, which is probably a battle you'll spend a lot of time and energy fighting, and you'll never win. Now it's going to leave you feeling even more defeated.
Yep.
And you know what? All of this might feel like it's somehow easing your pain because at least you're doing something, right? You're fighting back. But what you're really doing is keeping yourself emotionally attached to the attitudes and behaviors of the ex-wife. And you're actually creating a barrier in your own family because your stepkids are going to sense the tension.
Right.
They aren't blind to the war being waged between their homes.
Yeah.
And this will definitely have a negative impact on their ability to connect with you. The reality is that any degree of warfare that you choose to engage in with the ex, it's going to diminish the kid's capacity to accept and care for you.
Yep.
If bio mom wants to continue the war and make you enemy number one, that's her choice. But the truth is that over time, many kids will begin to understand the pettiness and the unfairness as they mature. But they'll also see how you choose to respond. And the truth will eventually become really clear to the stepkids.
Yeah. We've seen that with Annika.
Yeah. So the question here that you really need to ask yourself and be honest, is it worth it? Is it really worth the energy and the time it's robbing from you and the relationships in your home? Is it worth risking the future relationship you're really trying to build with your stepkids when they see you fighting back aggressively rather than handling their mom with patience, confidence, and grace?
Wow, that's a powerful question.
Yeah. If you've decided, no, it isn't worth it, and you want to end the war, then it's time to take some new action steps. And the first one is to abandon fairness.
Wait, what?
You got to go there.
Are you kidding me?
Honestly, the healthy approach is to intentionally choose to lose some of the battles of fairness along the way in order to win the war of well-being for your family and for your own emotional stability and peace.
Yeah, say that again.
The healthy approach here is to intentionally choose to lose some of the battles of fairness in order to win the war of well-being for your family and for your own emotional stability and peace.
Wow.
Listen, you can't be the wife and the stepmom you really want to be if you're stuck in the trap of defensiveness. And every time that you choose to react and attack back, even if it feels warranted, you're drawing lines of loyalty and putting your stepkids in a position of having to choose. And the truth is, they'll always choose their biological connection. This is a war you can't really win by fighting back. You've got to learn how to manage your own emotions well. You've got to decide to take the high road and get strategic around the best ways to respond to these issues.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really powerful first step, this idea of abandoning fairness. And it's
hard.
Not always easy, but like you said earlier, like blended family life isn't always fair.
No.
And if we strategically choose those times when we need to abandon fairness, it can help to break some of those unhealthy cycles that might be going on.
Absolutely.
So thank you for sharing that. That's a really powerful thing. You know, another positive step is to stay focused on your own reality and the truth about you. Now, to do this, we suggest you might make a list of all the positive and true things that you know describe you. Here's what that list might sound like. I'm valued and appreciated. That's probably true about you somewhere in your life. My motives are good. My husband loves me, or my wife loves me. I know we're generally talking to stepmoms, but I got to put my wife loves me on my own list sometimes. Here's another truth. I want good things for my stepkids, or I'm a positive influence in my stepkids' lives. So when you make that list, then the next time you notice yourself starting to fixate on that ex, or when you're feeling insecure or threatened or attacked or hurt, you grab that list of those true things about you and you choose to focus on those realities, not the perceptions or the accusations of someone else, that ex in the other home, but the true things about you.
Yeah.
We're so excited to let you know about something brand new we've created just for you.
We've realized that with so many episodes available here on the show, it might feel a bit overwhelming to find the topics that matter most to you. That's why we've created a simple tool for you to receive a personalized playlist focused on your current struggle or your biggest challenge.
That's right. It's called the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz. You'll answer just a few questions, and based on your responses, we'll email you a curated custom playlist of episodes that are specific to you.
This simple quiz will direct you to the most impactful episodes that pertain to you personally and keep you on track in your journey of discovery, learning, and growth. So, scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes for this episode and click the link to take the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz today.
Okay, let's get back to the discussion.
And that reminds me, of a quote I've always loved from Eleanor Roosevelt. No one can make you feel inferior without your permission.
Yeah, that's true.
Don't give away your permission.
Yeah.
Stand firm in the truth about who you are and stay secure in your own reality, regardless of what the ex says or thinks or does.
Right.
You can maintain your own power and confidence. So don't allow the ex to steal your confidence and to steal your joy.
That's right.
And, to do this really well, it can also be helpful for you to take some time to understand your own emotional triggers and your own vulnerabilities. We all have them.
Every one of us, that's right.
If you notice that something the ex has done or said really seems to be pushing your buttons, stop and ask yourself what's going on inside and why you might be experiencing an emotionally charged reaction.
Yeah.
You might consider working with a qualified coach or counselor to help you become more aware of what's behind your emotions and how to regulate them in a healthy way.
Sure.
Honey, we've discovered this amazing tool we love. It's called Relate Strong, that we teach to couples and to individuals, and we use it ourselves in our own marriage. It's just a really amazing tool. And Relate Strong is actually focused on understanding your triggers, recognizing how you tend to react, and then applying a simple process that helps you to regulate your emotions and respond in better ways.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, ways that don't cause you or others harm, which is always nice.
Good to be able to do that.
So we can certainly help you with that if you're interested. Just schedule a free coaching call to learn more about the Relate Strong program. We'll put a link in the show notes if you want to do that.
Yeah, and like Kim said earlier, this isn't easy when you're facing these difficult interactions and complex dynamics with the ex in that other home. But you can get there with the right tools and some intentional action. And honestly, a thick skin helps sometimes too.
Yeah, definitely.
Try to remember that it's not your personhood that's offensive to the ex. It's your position. If you had met your husband's ex under any other circumstance, like at a yoga class or cooking class or through mutual friends or something like that, their perspective could be very different than their viewpoint is right now. And they'd most likely even enjoy interacting with you in those other settings, right?
Yeah.
But because of your current position as a stepmom to their children, another woman who's influencing them, your position can really feel threatening and painful and kind of scary for them. They're going to perceive you from whatever reality they can even handle. And many times they're dealing with a lot of negative triggers due to the pain from the past and even the current dynamics. There was this quote in Stepmom magazine a while back that said this: "I can see how a mother could feel jealous or threatened by a stepmom with intentions to create a new family from her old one."
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of a sickening feeling, actually, right?
It's a hard place to be.
The fact is that the only control you have over these difficult dynamics is how you choose to show up. So regardless of that ex's reality, what their perception is their reality, you can still show up well and resist adding to the drama. You can choose to be friendly, collaborative, trustworthy, and honorable, even when they aren't.
Yeah, yeah. And another way to think about your position is to consider this. What if you and your husband had never met and he ended up marrying someone else? The reality is that someone else would most likely be treated exactly the same way
That's right.
by the ex that you're being treated now.
Yep.
It's not you as a person that's the problem. It's the position you've entered into that's created a difficult perspective for the ex to navigate and accept.
Yeah.
Especially, if the divorce was bitter and they're projecting their own animosity around their ex, your husband, onto you.
Yeah, that's right.
If he's still her enemy, then by proxy, you will most likely be her enemy as well.
Yep.
Not because of who you are or anything you've done, but simply because you fell in love with her ex-husband.
Yeah, guilty by association, right? Yeah.
And I also just want to mention, if you're questioning your personhood and your role and wondering, am I responding well, or have I done something offensive, or how am I supposed to be interacting with her or the kids? If you're really wondering if there's something that you could do better and improve, or if you need some reassurance that you're doing great, you're fine, and you're just kind of unsteady, get some verification around that. You can certainly reach out to us or reading the Smart Stepmom book by Ron Deal and really get your footing of, where it is that...
What is your role?
Yeah, what is your role, and are you doing your best?
Yep.
putting your best foot forward, because in these situations, sometimes we're not at our best. It's hard to be under attack all the time.
And it can be confusing.
Yeah, it really can be.
Yeah, very, very much so. You know, we've talked about some simple limits that you and your husband can make around how much time and energy you'll spend talking about the ex and discussing issues that revolve around her and how to respond to her incoming communications. We've touched on why it's beneficial to redirect your focus and regain your confidence and power by landing on your truth and not allowing the ex's perspectives and beliefs to dictate your reality. So now we just want to talk a little bit about something we've seen play out many times around these dynamics. And it really is unfortunate, but I want you to know it's not hopeless.
Yeah, you know, when we meet with couples and begin the coaching process, we always ask about their relationship with their exes and what their co-parenting situation is like.
That's right.
And over the years, we've heard quite a few tragic stories about early incidents that occurred at the very beginning of their relationship when it came to meeting the ex or interacting with them for the first time.
Sure.
It might be some kind of misunderstanding or just a really awkward moment that turned sour, maybe a false assumption that led to an accusation. There was something that seemed to take place, and it created an obvious problem at the time. And the result was hurt feelings or some conflict.
Yep.
And now, because of that early incident, things started off on the wrong foot, and now they're constantly at odds with the ex.
That one thing set the tone for the whole relationship.
Such a bummer.
Yeah.
So what we want to point out here, and why we think this is so sad, is that realistically, we need to expect that in the beginning, when you don't know them very well, except for maybe what you've heard from your partner, which isn't always the most helpful point of reference.
Not the most subjective,
And, you know, they don't know you, you know, during this very precarious stage. We just simply cannot expect everyone to be on their best behavior.
Right.
Things are tentative and confusing. Emotions are high. There's a lot at stake. And often people just say or do things out of character that they later come to regret. Unfortunately, the damage is done and the stage has been set. There's some negative opinions that have been formed. Maybe the defenses go up and grudges are held.
Yeah.
And this is so tragic because you most likely have years of co-parenting ahead of you.
Sure.
And rather than giving some grace and just striving to build a friendly, cooperative relationship, you're now seeing each other through a really negative lens based on earlier interactions and these really unfortunate missteps from that awkward time when people really weren't at their best.
Yeah, that's right.
And the worst thing about these circumstances is that it only takes a few stressful interactions that lead to misguided conclusions, guardedness, mistrust. And this often seems to kick off a war between bio and stepmom. And an ongoing war between homes is extremely detrimental and difficult for the kids who become prisoners of war and are sometimes even used as weapons. And of course, a war like this is going to create a lot of tension and stress for all the adults as well.
Yeah, you know, if that's you, then we want to encourage you to take a positive and courageous step that's going to help you move out of that war zone. And again, this isn't easy. We call people to do hard things.
We do.
But it is something that you can do for yourself. And that's to release the grudge and choose to forgive, kind of wipe the slate clean, and you choose to cease fighting.
Yeah.
You know, we worked with one woman, we'll call her Helen, whose initial interaction with her then fiance's ex-wife was extremely painful.
Oh, yeah.
The ex actually called the police and tried to get a restraining order to keep Helen away from her stepkids. Unfortunately, this ex-wife didn't handle the fact that her ex-husband was moving on romantically very well. No. She jumped to a bunch of negative conclusions about Helen and really overreacted, creating a lot of drama and pain. But you know what? Eventually, with the couple's wedding day approaching, Helen decided to send a heartfelt letter to the ex-wife, the same ex-wife who basically attacked her. And she simply said that she didn't intend to take her place in the kids' lives. She said that she'd always honor her role as the bio mom. Helen promised to be a caring stepmom to these kids.
Yeah.
Helen was able to do something really difficult. She gave grace and viewed the ex-wife with empathy. It took a lot of courage to look beyond that first incident and the difficult interactions that had taken place. But Helen didn't want that to overshadow their relationship, and she believed that things could eventually get better. So she chose to extend that olive branch and offer the stressed out bio mom just a little bit of security, hope, and understanding. You know what? This move was all about taking the high road and choosing to do the right thing for the family. But really, Helen had to decide to forgive those past offenses. She had to let go of the pain and refuse to engage in further warfare. And she did this without any expectation of how the ex would respond or even that her attitude toward Helen would change. She simply did it because for her, it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
You know what? If Helen can do something like that, so can you. And if you want to learn more about ways to extend that olive branch and open up the possibility for improvement in your relationship with your husband's ex, just like Helen did, you might go back and check out episode 45 called How to Cooperate More with Your Spouse's Uncooperative Ex.
Yeah.
Now, we want to be really clear here. Forgiving someone has nothing to do with excusing poor behavior or allowing yourself to be verbally abused or walked all over. It also doesn't mean that you suddenly trust them or do away with any of your boundaries. Choosing to forgive is really just about setting yourself free, and it's something that you have complete control over. If you're really tired of holding on to the past and you'd like to free yourself up, check out episode 64. It's called How to Set Yourself Free by Choosing to Forgive. The sooner the war ends, the better for everyone. You might even consider going back and checking out episode 48 called Introspective Questions that Help You Put Your Kids First. And that one had a special guest named Liza Gold, who's a psychotherapist who also grew up in a blended family and experienced these two homes being at war.
Yeah, she describes really well the impact of that, how it impacted her relationship with her stepmom.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, here's the bottom line. Your husband's ex might always be combative toward you.
That's right.
You may never be able to have that collaborative relationship with her or trust her, and she may never trust you either. But the fact is, you can't change or control how she chooses to behave.
Right.
However, you do have control over yourself and how you choose to respond. You have control over how much power you allow her to have in your life and in your home, how much she's allowed to invade your thoughts, your time and energy, as well as you have control over those offenses that you continue to ruminate on.
Yeah.
But when you can choose to forgive, you'll discover a healthy way to release and let go of that pain. And the truth is, when your heart is free of bitterness, resentment, anger, and hate, you can then show up well and love well in the relationships that matter most in your own home. And I know this from personal experience that doing the hard work of forgiveness is well worth it.
Sure.
I know when I went through this process, I became a better person, a happier, lighter, joy-filled person once I was able to let go and forgive those in the other home who had deeply hurt me. So we, again, just encourage you to go back and listen to that episode about forgiveness if you're ready to call a truce within your own heart and move beyond the pain. And we'll put a link to that episode in the show notes for you.
That's right. And you know what? Before we wrap up, let's touch on just a couple more important things that can really help in these challenging dynamics. First, learn to handle your conflict well between you and your current spouse. You and your spouse will most likely have disagreements around how to handle decisions and issues pertaining to the ex. This is really common.
Yeah.
It's natural for your husband to probably want to appease the ex and not rock the boat in order to maintain some stability for the kids. Do your best not to engage in a competition with your husband's ex or assume that he's neglecting you if he's just having a hard time holding boundaries with his ex. These dynamics can become very confusing and challenging for everyone, and it's easy to fall into a cycle of conflict when issues around the ex come up. But we believe that every couple can learn to work through conflict and learn how to engage in productive conversations around challenging and painful issues.
Yeah, you can do it.
Yeah. And if you'd like to find out how you can improve your communication and resolve conflict, please reach out and connect with us. We're here to help. Learning to do conflict well is an important skill for every couple, but especially for blended family couples, that's dealing with that difficult ex. It's really important. So we encourage you to just take an action step and grow in this area. Learn the conflict resolution skills that you need so that you can stay connected in your relationship and not allow these challenges to become a growing wedge between you. Ultimately, you won't like where that leads.
No.
We had to learn this the hard way. After allowing that wedge to grow bigger and bigger, we ended up really disconnected in our relationship. And some of the main reasons were because we just weren't equipped to work through the conflict. And some of our conflict really had to do with dealing with your ex. And it was really challenging. Yeah. We don't want that to happen to you.
No. And that brings us to our final thought for today. And that's to stay connected in your relationship.
Yeah.
When you're under attack from an ex-spouse and you're struggling to kind of keep your head above the stress and all of the painful emotions that are continually getting stirred up, it's really easy to unintentionally begin shutting down and to disengage and become disconnected in your marriage. This can be especially true if your husband's time and energy is often drained by issues with his ex and the kids.
Or if your wife's time and energy is drained by issues with her ex.
Yeah, you experience that for sure.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling insecure, distant, or disconnected in your relationship, take action and take action now.
Yeah, for sure.
Find ways, even small, simple ways to build your romantic connection and to intentionally cultivate more intimacy, passion, and commitment. This is going to really help to ease that trapped teammate, stranded stranger dynamic that can be so painful. And it'll help both of you to experience a deeper sense of security and unity.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is put a link to an episode that describes that trapped teammate, stranded stranger dynamic if you're unfamiliar with that and you want to learn more. And if you feel like you need some support in staying connected and you're ready to take action, we're also going to put a link to the episode 78, which is called Cultivating More Passion, Intimacy, and Commitment in Your Marriage, just to get you started.
Yeah.
And, we want you to know that there are all kinds of amazing resources out there to help you discover how you can improve your relationship and navigate all the challenges that blended family couples face. In fact, at the time of this recording, I went and I counted.
Really?
We actually have 32 episodes just on the topic of marriage that are available to you that can help you and encourage you and just continue to be learners. That's what we really want for you, and to make intentional efforts to create meaningful connection in your relationships.
Yeah.
So important.
That's right. Minimize the conflict, learning to do it well, and increase that connection. And if we can do both of those things well, then we've got a lot of hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we do hope that this episode's been helpful for people who are facing these tough dynamics with an ex, and a lot of us are. We've been there. And we want you to know that we're here for you. And if you could use some individualized support, just reach out to us. We would love to be able to support you.
Please do.
Now, next week, we're going to be talking about another tough dynamic for blended families, as if they're on.
Yeah, when don't we?
And, we're going to talk about ways to cope with kids that are resistant and having some trouble accepting a step-parent, or might even be full-on rejecting a step-parent.
How do you deal with rejection?
Yeah, you won't want to miss that one. It'll be a good one to talk about.
Yeah.
But that makes this episode a wrap.
Until next time.